What's up, everybody? The Game 2K2 here again, and I'm here to do a commentary today. And I'm doing a commentary on my top 10 worst video games from 1995 to 2011. The reason why I'm doing this particular video is because I'm here to answer, the main question that everyone has, and that's what the hell was I thinking when I came up with this video? And the truth is that this was a very last minute and a very rushed video. It released on the date that I originally scheduled it to release, but what happened was what was supposed to be a 5-day development phase to make this video became a lot shorter because during this particular month I had gotten hired onto a film shoot, so my schedule was very limited. So what was a 5-day development phase turned into a 1-day development phase, and I had to choose 10 games, but I could not do it the way I originally wanted to. I wanted to choose out of all the games that I had, and but I wound up choosing like 30 games and choosing the 10 out of the 30, which is not the way a top 10 list should be done. So about half of these games I would keep on this list, the other half I wouldn't keep on this list. Iron Man 2, this would definitely remain on this list. This was a terrible game. And unfortunately it's developed by Sega, and I hate saying that Sega developed this terrible game because I love Sega. But, the reason why I hated Iron Man 2 so much more than Iron Man 1, which was equally as terrible, was because Sega didn't do anything to really improve it. It was still the same boring gameplay, and really the same overall boring storyline that the game goes off of. And, it's unfortunate that the game turned out as bad as it did, especially coming from a great franchise like Iron Man. Tony Hawk Ride would remain on here as well. This was also a very terrible game, and I already dislike Activision as it is for changing developers. They went from Neversoft to Rainbow Studios, and as I say in the video, I don't think Neversoft, their final effort with Proving Ground, was as bad. Was so bad that they had to change developers. I don't think it was that bad. But speaking of the Tony Hawk franchise, I will be continuing my Tony Hawk reviews. What initially happened was I finished Project 8, but I had a hard drive crash, so I have to redo the entire review. It won't be out in December, but it will definitely be out in January. But again, terrible game. I hated the motion controls. They were awful, and I'm dreading the day I have to do the full review for that game. Hitman, I would not keep on this list. It was definitely one of the worst games from the 30 that I played, but it wasn't so bad that it deserved to be on this list. It's actually not as bad as I describe it being. One of the problems that I had when choosing out of 30 is that I had to embellish a lot on how I describe these games, and with Hitman, I've actually gained a little bit more respect for in the past few months, especially with the developer, Eidos, I don't know how to pronounce their name, please correct me if you can. But with that developer, they've gone out loud and saying that they did not have the time or the money to finish the game the way they wanted it to, so it had to be released as is. And, when you have to compare like that, it actually looks pretty good. Sonic Shuffle. I don't know whether I would keep this on the list or not. I do not like Sonic Shuffle. I got ripped apart for not liking it, but I stand by what I said. One of the reasons why I don't like Sonic Shuffle is because this was pretty much post Sonic Adventures, which, as I said in my look back of Sonic the Hedgehog, I consider it to be an okay game, but it was a really good game when you consider it that it converted to the Dreamcast. They literally brought the Sonic gameplay to the Dreamcast, and for some reason Sonic Shuffle just seemed like a step backwards. It had this arcadey type of gameplay which the Dreamcast was known for, and I didn't think that worked for the Sonic character at all. Rise of the Silver Surfer, that would remain on this list. The thing about the Fantastic Four franchise in general, much like the movie franchise, is that they could do so much with it. there's so much to the Fantastic Four comics, and to see the movies come out the way they did, which, by the way, I'm going to be reviewing the movies in January. And to see the games, the way they stand. And there's not many great comic book games to begin with. I think only Spider-Man has done. Actually, Spider-Man has done very well. Batman has been going very well as well with Arkham Asylum and Arkham City. But the Fantastic Four, so much potential, but they did not live up to that potential. It just wound up being another repetitive action game, which is where so many comic book games end up being in. Dave Mirra's Freestyle BMX, I got ripped apart for that. That would most likely not be on this list. One of the reasons why I look down on Dave Mirra's Freestyle BMX is because I actually played this game after Matt Hoffman's Pro BMX came out, which actually this game I believe is a year older. But that's actually a pretty poor reason to put it on the list. And, in a way I kind of stand by what I said too. The gameplay was not all there for the game, and mainly because it was one of the first BMX games. The trick list wasn't fully realized, the graphics were a little shoddy for the PS1, but, it still didn't deserve to be on this list. It was a good game considering it was one of the first BMX games. As much as people might hate this, I would actually keep Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games on this list. Mainly because it's like I said on the video, for a game that was one of the first games to feature these two franchises by themselves, everyone likes to remind me of Super Smash Bros., which was several different franchises. I really wanted a game that, was just, the Sonic and the Mario franchise, because that was the big rivalry in the late 80s and early 90s, with Sonic versus Mario. And this wasn't what I had in mind, and again, I stick by what I said. I would like to see a Mortal Kombat style game. Seeing a T-rated game or mature-rated game from these two franchises would be really awesome and also kind of funny. But this was not what I expected. I thought the Olympic Games was really boring. Godfather 2, I got ripped apart for that too. With the Godfather 2, it would not be on this list, but I still don't like the game as it is. With the Godfather 1, it was an okay game. You saw where the developers were going with it, kind of like this Grand Theft Auto style game, but with a Godfather type of feel to it. And it worked out pretty well. There were still some problems with the first game. The gameplay was still highly repetitive. But with Godfather 2, the gameplay is not updated a lot. And for me, that was one of the big problems. And the fact that the graphics, it was such a glitched out game, especially when you got to the city. Objects floated. It was glitch hell, and I really didn't enjoy the game because of that. But again, it's a really poor reason to put a game on this list. So it would not be on there. 3 Extreme. If I ever decide, and I probably will never do it, if I ever choose to redo this list, this would probably be a tie between 3 Extreme and Superman. 3 Extreme was so awful, and when I moved into the house that I'm currently living in, I had a box full of old PS1 games, and this was a game that was one of the first games that I bought for my PS1, and when I pulled it out, it was covered in dust, and I decided, I'll play this game. And it's terrible. And I played 2 Extreme, just for the hell of it. I played 2 Extreme after it, and 2 Extreme was so much fun, but this game was like half the game with half the features. It was awful. And even considering the fact that it was one of the first Extreme Sports games, it doesn't even seem good by those standards. And Superman, of course. I'm sure people who watched this video saw this selection coming a mile away. And Superman, or Superman 64, as it's called by most people, it's not even good by Superman standards. Superman game standards, and that's bad. That's a bad standard too, because Superman has been butchered in the video game world. If you don't believe me, just check out the Angry Video Game Nerds video on the Superman reviews. That's actually a really It's actually a 100% accurate depiction of what the Superman games have been like. But the fact that it's even worse than those standards is terrible. But you know what? It's actually one of the very few bad older games that I've kept. Because like I said before, a lot of these older games are going to wind up being classics. And I see that happening with Superman 64. It's so bad that guaranteed it's going to be worth money someday because it's so bad. It's like, people are going to be going, I have Superman 64. Ooh! Oh, man. But, you know, that was the original list. Again, you know, I would change half of it. And I really do apologize with how this list came about. You know, I should have been more mature about it. I should have just said, you know what, my schedule's not going to allow it. I should just do something else. I should leave this for later. And, you know, with my top 10 list, I usually have a 5 to 10 day development phase, and that's the way it's going to remain, because this turned out terrible from what I had originally in mind. I love these credits, by the way. This was the first time I used this scroll-like credits, which is very reminiscent of Star Wars. If I could put the stars in the background, that'd be awesome. And I've used this credit scroll, I believe, for all my top 10 lists since then. But, yeah, again, I apologize for how this list came about, and hopefully, you know, I never do a top 10 list this bad again. You know, hopefully that never happens. But thank you guys for listening, and I will see you next time.